Today's guest says that self-reliance can help you build your personal brand, communicate more effectively, and help you make a much greater impact in your work. Today, I had the joy of speaking with Maha Abouelenein, the founder and CEO of Digital and Savvy, who has more than 30 years of experience as a global communication strategist. She's also the recent author of the book 7 Rules of Self-Reliance and is here today to drop some knowledge. In this conversation, she shares with us how you can build a personal brand while still protecting your private life, process of communicating effectively when what's on your heart to share is maybe controversial, and how to be self-reliant while still being supported by your community. My friends, it was an honor to connect with and have this conversation with a brilliant communicator, powerful storyteller, and just a freaking strong woman. This, my friends, is the amazing Maha Abouelenein.
Self-reliance is the thing that we aren't trained or taught how to do, but is the thing that can make the difference in your life. You have to invest in your personal brand. And I really think that if you rely on yourself to build your own brand, you will succeed in the things you want to achieve, because Heather, no one's going to put you at the top of their priority list except for you. I went from being a waiter to being a creator. And now I'm constantly, even with my work with clients, thinking, how can I create? What can I create? How can I create? What can I create? Because I'm like, if the sky's the limit, then why don't I dream a little bit bigger? And every time I pushed myself to think of something I would love to do, I actually did it myself instead of somebody giving it to me.
Maha, I am so honored to have you on the show today. I believe I've seen you in person a couple of times at a couple of different events, and then following you recently on Instagram. I'm like, this is just a badass woman who I can learn so much from, because I was telling you before, I feel like some of these skills, communication ones, I'm really, really interested in. I want to be an excellent communicator. I love storytelling. I've been diving so deep into that as of late. And then your book, your first book, 7 Rules of Self-Reliance. I was telling you, I feel like self-reliance is something that I'm sharpening and learning, and it's something that doesn't necessarily come natural for me, but I recognize it's something so important to building your personal brand and the impact that you feel called to make. So big sloppy intro, but I just think the world of you, and I'm just so honored to have you on the show today. So thanks for jumping on.
Heather, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I have been also listening to your podcast. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I just love how authentic you are and how you communicate with people. And I'm so excited to be here today. And just going off what you just said in the introduction about communications, like with the coming of AI or mass layoffs or the way we compete in the world today, digitally, remotely, you got to be really, really good at communications. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. So how do we show up at work? How do we show up in relationships? How do we show up on social? Like, being able to communicate your ideas effectively is going to be something that everybody needs to understand. It's like an imperative to master. And it's not just the storytelling aspects. It's like, how do I share my ideas, spread my ideas, build myself? Yeah. And it all starts with good communication.
Little side trail over here real quick. I just want to press into that a little bit. When you couple communications with tech,
yes,
my instinct is more constantly in front of people. But then I've been trying to counter that with intentional communication and intentional storytelling. And sometimes it feels like there's some tension there, because if you want to be at the forefront and putting things out and being relevant, tempering that with intentionality and something that's quality. It's been interesting for me trying to find a balance between those worlds, because part of me is like, Heather, you need to be putting out more reels, girl, to get in front of more people. But then also I want those to be really well crafted and be very, very intentional that I'm saying, and that takes time. So as a communication strategist, I'm curious your perception on volume versus intention.
So I think of it as 2 things. One is use the technology to amplify what you're trying to say. Yeah. And the second thing is what you're trying to say has to be valuable. So making sure that intentional piece that you were just talking about, like, how do I make sure that my social media, if that's the main way, one of the ways I'm communicating with people, that what I'm giving my audience is valuable to them. It's not what I think is
Mm,
valuable. It's not what I think is important. It's what they think is valuable. And that's why people, whether you do one reel a day or two reels a week, make it valuable. Whatever it is you do,
right.
don't worry about frequency, worry about the quality of the message, the quality of the
Yeah.
value you're bringing to your audience, and then be consistent in doing that. That's what I care more about than the frequency of number of posts or number of hits or number of
Right.
outreach that you're doing. Because if I follow you, I care about what you have to say every time you have to say it, regardless of
Mm,
when you say it. It's what you say
amen.
that matters.
There has now looping this into self-reliance. When you say that, I think I talk a lot with my hands, Maha, by the way. If you talk about communication, you're going to
Yeah.
see a lot of this. When I think about the intentionality behind adding value and being well-crafted messages, in my being, I feel like there has to be a level of security and knowing who I am and just coming from a place of very groundedness. And I'm curious, my I mean, I looked up the term self-reliance to find out the official term, but before then I was thinking on terms of it's something that you know who you are and you intentionally build a path towards where you want to go. And that intentionality, that groundedness, I was telling you before and started the podcast with it. I feel like I came out a little more wobbly, and as I've become a communicator, I've noticed my voice shaking less and less and less and less. But for those of us who maybe don't identify with the self-reliance piece, why is it important for us to learn that? Because I could just say, Maha, that's not something I was born with. That's not something that comes really naturally to me. Maybe that's a weakness. You believe this is a skill set that anybody can learn. In fact, they must learn
Yep.
it.
Yeah, I believe that self-reliance is the thing that we aren't trained or taught how to do, but is the thing that can make the difference in your life. So self-reliance for me is not about going it alone, not collaborating or working with other people. Self-reliance means what are the tools I need to have in myself to rely on myself to succeed. It's a makeup of
Mm,
self-worth. It's a makeup of self-confidence and actually believing that I can do these things. So let me put it into context for you. So self-reliance for me is like, oh, I need to have a network of people. Instead of relying on my employer to have a network or relying on other people's relationships to get things done, why don't I invest time in building my own relationships? That's a value. So if I'm an
mm,
entrepreneur, I need to have a network. If I work at a company, I need to have a network. By having a network, I'm valuable to that company. So that's a skill. Like, how do we really network in this day and age through social media, through LinkedIn, through that mastering the DM, through remote working environments? How do you network properly? And if I can rely on myself to have meaningful and valuable relationships, that's going to serve me. What if we have another pandemic? Who am I going to call for help? Well, you better call
mm.
yourself because you had the right relationships and you built that relationship with other people to use that network in a time in need. So that's an example. Another example of self-reliance is building your personal brand. Your name, Heather, is the only thing you actually own. You acquired that microphone,
Yeah.
that shirt, that tree, that chair, everything you own, you've purchased, but you didn't actually own anything except for the name you were born with. What are you doing to build and protect your name? What are you doing to invest in your personal brand? Again, whether you're entrepreneur or whether you're employee, you need to know how you are showing up in the world and to make sure that you're making a concerted effort to doing it. So do you have a strong LinkedIn account? How do you show up in meetings? What do you do if you go to network at events? How do you conduct business? Like building your personal brand is not about self promotion. It's about idea promotion. It's not about
Right.
self promotion. It's about thought leadership. So, oh, I
Right.
have expertise in something. I should share it. Or I want to be known for this topic. And how am I going to build myself as this guy? How am I going to build
Mm,
myself as this girl who talks about this topic? You have to actually have an intention and you have to be
yeah.
thinking about how I'm going to actually put it out into the world. And that's your personal brand. Your personal brand is your skills, your experience, and your personality. So sometimes people say to me, oh, well, I'm a personal trainer. I want to, create a platform on social media, get customers. There's a million personal trainers out there. There are. They might have the same skills and the same experience, but they don't have your personality. What makes a
Right.
personal brand personal is you. So how do you bring
Right.
that out in how you do yoga, photography, cooking, food content, whatever it is that you love to do as a main job or as a side hustle? You have to invest in your personal brand. And I really think that if you rely on yourself to build your own brand, you will succeed in the things you want to achieve, because Heather, no one's going to put you at the top of their priority list except for you.
Right. Preach.
It's just a
Yes.
fact of life. Everyone's busy with their own
Yeah.
lives and their own problems. So like, how do I put my
Yeah.
best foot forward, whether I want to get more money in the next job or acquire an investor for my startup or attract talent to my company or retain talent in my company? Well, if you have a good personal brand as a leader and people want to work for you, and that's just
Right.
basically how it works.
When in your career did you realize that self-reliance was something that you needed to establish and work on? Because that's not
You're
something
born with.
that I think I've ever thought much about until I started reading about your book and what you're working on. And I don't think I would have used those terms, but I was like, damn, that is the thing. That's what I've been trying to work on, is self-reliance. But I don't think I was ever taught that, or was even aware that that was something that I needed to
Yeah,
develop.
actually, it's a term that hasn't been used that much. People know what it is, like to rely on yourself, but like, what does it actually mean? I feel like for
Right.
me, I have been, and this I talk a lot about in the book, but like my personal journey, I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I grew up in a
Hmm.
small town, college campus town. I ended up having to move to the Middle East and live in Egypt when I really didn't know anybody. And I had to figure out what I was going to do for a job and a career. And I had to rely on myself to figure out how I'm going to build myself and a career and a job and like adulting and all these things. And so I feel like I was sort of forced to. And I think a lot of people who are forced in situations to do things, they either sink or swim, and they figure out, okay,
Yeah.
if we do face another pandemic, I have more skills today than I had 4 years ago, because now I know, like, if we get stuck in a bind and you can't go to work, or your company lays you off, or your startup has to close because of the things that you do don't work in a pandemic, like, you got to have tools and skills so that you can get yourself out of that situation. I will never want to be in a situation that a lot of us faced during the pandemic, where you were like relying on somebody else to take care of
Right.
you or to manage your future. So what are those skills you need? Again, I want to reiterate, this is if you are a full-time employee or an entrepreneur. It's not just for one or
Yeah.
the other. Even for students, like I spend a lot of time, and I will be spending a lot of time, especially when this book comes out, going out of college tour, talking to students about like skills you need for today's workplace are not the same that they were a year or 2 years ago. Look at the coming of AI. Like, a lot of people are threatened by AI, that it's going to take away jobs. I can categorically tell you it'll create an enormous amount of jobs. Enormous. It'll build the
Yep.
economy in ways we didn't even know possible. So how can you prepare yourself for that? One of the principles
Yes.
of self-reliance is about learning, being curious, being a lifelong learner, unlearning old ideas that aren't relevant anymore, relearning new things now that we have new information about how we're adapting those changes into how we operate. Like, not being threatened by AI, not being threatened by social media. It's how we communicate. It's how we live.
Right.
So you better be a part of that conversation and be part of it and be actively participating in it. I mean, I still have friends who are like, oh, I'm not on social media. I don't want to post my vacations. Like, you don't need to be on social media, post your personal life. You don't. Gary Vee is a terrific example of that. I do work with him. You can't find a picture of
Hmm.
anything to do with his family or children online. And he
Yep.
uses his social to build his company and his business and his brand and scale his ideas and help other people. And I feel like you have to do what feels intuitive and comfortable for you. But a
Yeah.
personal brand does not mean personal life.
Ooh, you just set some people free.
Yeah, because it's such a powerful tool, and you should use it in the way that makes you feel comfortable. Like, you don't need to be on every single platform. You don't need to
Yeah.
be on Instagram and
Yeah.
YouTube and TikTok and Twitter and Snapchat. Maybe you just want to be
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. Maybe you just want to be writing blogs. Like find what makes you feel comfortable, but have a presence, because I feel like in this day and age, not having a presence doesn't put you on the front foot that you probably need to rely on yourself to grow.
Absolutely. You know, I've had a few folks bring up this. I want to say this. It sounds so strange, but it's just true. This almost pressure to be authentic when you don't want to share your personal life, and they kind of grapple with that of how am I going to be authentic and have that personable vibe to me if I'm not showing my kid on the beach eating a snow cone, right? How do we reframe that authenticity piece to realize that it's not airing everything out to folks, because that's what we associate it with?
Think about the people that any of you who's listening to this podcast right now, like who do you follow and why? Is it because they show those summer vacation photos, or because they show behind the scenes of building the business, the challenges they
So good.
faced? What does it take to get a meeting with so and so? What are the things that they're thinking about? Their expertise, that advice that they just given an entrepreneur that they just met, following them along on a big event or a business trip.
Yeah.
That's what creates connectivity with an audience. That's what creates insights with an audience, is not necessarily the personal life, but more of the personal approach to how they approach things that they do in their business lives. Honestly,
Mm,
even if, I sometimes, if people follow me, like I'll take people along with me on a trip to Dubai or something that I'm doing, because I want to educate them. Like, what is it like doing business in Dubai? What's that like? What's that journey like?
right.
What are some of the things? But it's really the insights of what happens on a business trip and what that culture is like. That's what people gets people connected and really engaged.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. I'm curious why this book topic when you've had 30 plus years of global communication strategy. I mean, I read your bio. It is so incredible. The rooms you've been in, and I mean, you've earned every bit of it, and the influence that you've had, the ears that listen to you and take your advice. I mean, and absolutely amazing. So my thought was when I saw your book title was,
It's not a
wouldn't it
communication.
be about
Yeah.
communication? What? So
It's not a communications book. That's such a good insight. Actually, I've never been asked that question yet or before. It does give you a lot of communications advice, like how to build your personal brand, how
yeah,
to network, but I feel like the things that I've learned in my 30-year career working for the Googles, the Netflix, the Gary V's, the Deepak Chopras, the General Mills, and some of the big companies that I've
right.
been so fortunate to work with, is that when you take a step back to look at your career and the things that I've consistently been supporting across these companies and these
Mm,
people, it was how to create value for other people. And so I try to take a step back and like, what can I really give people that will arm them with tools and skills for the future? So it includes
mm,
communications, of course, but it's not a communications book. It's a business and
right.
leadership book. And it also includes a lot of my personal stories of projects and things I've worked on so that you can actually see it in action. Like when I talk about creating value for other people, I worked for Gary for like a year and a half before I got paid. Like I was trying to just create
Yeah.
value. I worked
Yeah.
for the prime minister of Egypt for no reason, no payment, just because I wanted to create value. Like, what does that mean to create value for other people? And what are the benefits and rewards of doing that? And so the reason why the book is not a communications book, it's more of skills you need for life, is because I looked at all the different things that I thought over that 30-year career, creating value for other people. Don't be a waiter, step up and ask for the opportunities
Right.
or create them if you want. How to learn and unlearn, how to create networks, how to live with no regrets. Because I feel like those apply to any business or anybody
Right.
who has ambition. And I feel like that's the bigger message of my story, my personal story, my career, my work journey,
Mhm.
that I think will have the biggest impact on people. I've shared a couple of copies with some advanced people to get some endorsements for the book. And I say what they've told me is it works for students. It works for
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. It works for people who are about to retire and looking for the second act of their career. because self-reliance is universal to any career or anybody, because it's about how you can achieve things you really want to do. And I really always, always, always believe it starts with you. Like, how do
Mm,
I invest in myself? How do I own my future? Usually we're waiting for permission from other people. Usually we're afraid of what other people will think. That's the biggest reason why
yep.
people don't post on
Yeah.
social media. It's like, oh, my friends are going to say, oh, that person now, that's what
Absolutely.
she does now. She posts motivational stuff. Like, how is she an expert? Like, who does she think she is? Right.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
fear is what holds us back from doing what we really want. And isn't that a terrible way to live your life, is you're doing things because of other people, not what you want?
Where's the line here with becoming self reliant and also to open heart, open hands, community? Because I'll tell you what, my energy has, as I've gotten into the entrepreneurial space and started building and creating my brand and all of that, I want to get stronger and lean in more into the, forgive me for saying masculine energy,
Yeah.
feminine energy.
Yep.
Just
That
that's
makes sense.
like a little woo, lean into that. But I'm like, Heather, I want to preserve that heart for people. And I'm not good at community. I've been really working on being, asking for help and so forth. I'm curious how you counter both
Yep.
those, because you teach a lot about
Asking for help, for sure.
asking for
Sure.
help, needing other people. So how do you temper
Yeah.
both of
So
those worlds?
self-reliance, as I said in the very beginning, it's not about not collaborating with other people and not being by yourself. And I don't need anybody and I can do this all by myself.
Yeah.
Self-reliance is the mindset of, I can rely on myself. I can do it. And now I need to figure out, what am I missing, so I know who to ask and what to ask for. So for example, networking. A network is not there to serve you. My concept of networking is, I have to bring value to my network. I need to serve my network in order for my network to serve me.
It's a great
And it's
reframe.
really the important thing. Like, a network is not there for me to do favors or get a job for my son or my daughter or a relative. Like, really think about, how can you do such a good job with your network by being value to them, by adding, creating other connections for them, introducing them to people in your network. So eventually they bring you into their network. That's the goal,
Mm,
is that your network plus their network creates a new network. And I feel like a lot of people believe that, if you're going to be self-reliant, you're basically saying, nope, I don't need anyone. I got this.
right.
No, what I'm trying
Right.
to say is, build yourself, invest in yourself, and then figure out, when you ask for something, what you're missing in order to fill that
Mm,
gap that you have. Because a lot of people
yeah.
might ask a network for something just general. No, be specific so you can get exactly where you need to go. And just having that mindset of thinking through, these are the things I really want to achieve. I want to invest in myself by learning this language. I want to invest in myself by figuring out, okay, how do I get this certification so I can become a life coach? And if I get this
Yeah.
life coaching, then I'm going to need a network of my first set of clients, instead of trying to pitch to people to sell. Like, maybe I'll do it free for 5 people, just to get the experience, just to get the
Yeah.
testimonials, just to create the content around it, and then go out. Like, that's the self-reliance mindset, is do first, then ask, versus ask and then figure it out.
Yeah. I really like what you said earlier. It's like a light bulb went off in my head. You said something along the lines of, you're not waiting on somebody to go give you an opportunity. You're going to get the opportunity. So this is what I'm hearing you say, is self-reliance. It's like, I'm going to own that I'm the one that needs to move the ball forward. Someone else isn't going to come and move the ball forward for me.
I
I've got to
wrote
do
this
that.
story in the book. This guy said it to me like a long time ago. He was just having a conversation with me about this, that, and the other thing. And then he's like, oh, you're a waiter. And I'm like, what? He's like, you're a
Ooh,
waiter. And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, you're waiting. You're waiting for Mr. Right. You're waiting for your boss to give you that project that's going to make you a rock star.
jeez.
You're waiting for the better job to come along. You're waiting for your salary to go up. And I was like, I'm not a waiter. Like, I was like, and I went home that night and I was like, wait a second. You know what? I am kind
Mm,
of waiting. I'm just kind of going through the motions. I'm not unhappy. Things are
yeah.
working. Like, I have a good job. I have good life balance. I feel like I'm doing a good job, but like, I'm not I'm not growing. I'm not going anywhere.
Mm,
And so I'm like, okay, how can I move from a waiter to a creator. Maybe I should go create that opportunity. I was hoping my boss would give me this project. Maybe I should do the work to figure out how I can actually say, hey, I had some initiative. I want to do this. Or I've always wanted to attend this event. Well, why don't I find a way to get us there and create that
Yeah.
opportunity? And that whole conversation changed the trajectory of my life. I went from being a waiter to being a creator. And now I'm constantly, even with my work with clients, thinking, how can I create? What can I create? How can I create? What can I create? Because I'm like, if the sky's the limit, then why don't I dream a little bit bigger? And every time I've
Ooh,
pushed myself to think of something I would love to do, I actually did it myself instead of somebody giving it to me.
I love that
You'd be
question. What can I create
surprised.
here?
You'd be so surprised. Like, Heather, think of something that you really, really want to do. And you're like, why? Someone's got to give me that opportunity. Someone's got to offer you a book deal.
Mhm.
Someone's
Yeah.
got to offer you
Yeah.
a sponsorship. No, well, why don't you write it down, figure out what are the steps, and spend the next year trying to figure out how to do it? I mean, not to give
Yeah.
yourself like a time pressure of I need to do it now. Give yourself grace, give yourself time, give yourself time to the ebbs and flows of life and your schedule and other priorities. But like set that goal. Honestly, the amount of people that I have helped go from being a waiter to a creator, and then them saying all I had to do was just rethink about what I was doing. It works. It just does.
Yeah. What about you talk a lot about value creation. I believe that's even one of the chapters of your book. And I resonate with the idea of serving other people and so forth, where I've had to draw the line is learning boundaries where I don't get walked on or do quote, too much or get taken advantage of. And I know historically, not to make it a gender issue, but a lot of women struggle with that.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you approach value creation while still holding boundaries and being respected.
So first of all, when we say, like, even in my examples of working for free, like, you don't just give away the house for free. Like, you have to take calculated risks on what you're willing to not do and do. But you always have to maintain your integrity. No one's going to value
Mm,
you if you don't value yourself,
preach. Yes.
right? So you
Yes.
need to be
Yes.
valuable. So I can't work for free for everybody who wants to work with me, but I will be strategic about what I think the business opportunity is, or where the long-term thinking comes into play is where you need to really make that balance. So definitely protect yourself. Definitely hold yourself in high regards and value. Know your value. Get paid for what you're worth. But at the same time, figure out what are the opportunities that if you just open the door a little bit, it could actually make a 10x change for you, or could be the one or two things that you really think, if I spend a little bit of time investing in this, I really do think there's a long-term payoff here. And those are the calculated risks you need to make.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad this is the direction we're going. I wanted to ask you about gauging opportunities.
Yes.
Because sometimes we want to I need to gain opportunities, and sometimes a lot of opportunities are coming your way. And I just this morning had the thought, I said, Heather, you are being too passive with making decisions and not being more intentional with weeding out what's the right opportunity. Because a lot of things are coming inbound. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And I've got to be more strategic in saying no to way more stuff. So I'm curious how you teach people to gauge that, because I'm sure what comes across your desk, you're having to, part of self-reliance is the no element to it. So how do you gauge opportunities? What's
I
the
think
right one or
a
not?
big yardstick for me is if it gives me an opportunity to learn, I'm
Mm,
definitely in the camp of that's a priority. Like, so some opportunities in life either give you a chance to learn or to earn, right? So you're
learn or
either going
earn.
to either learn something, so you might not make as much money as you want to, but it's going to give you valuable experience. It's going to be an important client that you're working with. It might give you a customer that's going to teach you something about the industry that you wouldn't normally get unless you worked with that customer. So think about what the learning opportunity is versus the earning opportunity. So the earning opportunity is like, you know what, this is going to, really help our cash flow. It's really going to help our bottom line. It may not be the thing we really want to do, but in this time in our trajectory of our journey, it's the right thing to do because it's a responsible business financial decision to
Mm,
make. So that's how I look at opportunities too. I'm like, is it a chance to learn or a chance to earn? It has to be in one of those categories so that I can really make an assessment based on the business priorities and I really want listeners to think about those two lenses when thinking about stuff. Most of the time we make decisions based on earning potential, financial risk and
Yes.
reward. If that's an
Yes.
easy thing to
Yes.
assess. It's black and white. Do the numbers make sense? The learning is a little bit more ambiguous because you can't put a value on it, at least
Right.
not today. But if you think of that mindset of self-reliance as about learning, then okay, what can I learn from this opportunity that if I passed it up, I would regret not getting that learning opportunity? Or is there somebody else who can actually help me learn this that isn't this entity, opportunity, project, whatever? And so that's kind of how I would look at it myself.
That's a really good distinction. If I pass this up, I would regret it because I'm a pretty curious kind of gal. You know, you want to say like, hey, let's talk about blockchain and Web3. And then next thing you're like, hey, let's talk about a cool way to make chicken Alfredo. I'm like, let's go. Right. I'm curious by nature. And I think a lot of creative people who listen to this show, we are interested in a lot of domains. But what you said, that filter, would I regret not learning about this? I think that brings it down into more of a core. Is this something I need to know versus is Heather just being a little ADD again?
Yeah. Is it something you need to know versus want to know? Right.
That's really good. I wanted to ask you about reputation management. Do you know that you're the first person to bring that term to my awareness? I've never
Good.
thought about that before. And I have a lot of resistance around hearing that because, and I'm just being super transparent with you. When I think about reputation management, it goes kind of counter to this whole Heather be yourself piece. That's what comes up for me. Like almost a way I want Maha to see me versus the way I really am. So I'm just going to keep it real with you. Like, tell me where I'm wrong in that.
Okay. So you are like most people seeing it exactly the way you should, where you don't want reputation management sounds like manufactured, produced, something that's
Yeah.
orchestrated, that's trying to pull a fast one on me, right? Someone who's trying
Yeah.
to manage a reputation is trying too much to overproduce and stimulate what I'm seeing and how I'm seeing it. And I don't like that. I want no unfiltered transparency. I don't want someone to be managing someone's reputation that's been handled by
Right.
a handler or a publicist. I want the real thing, authenticity, transparency. But what I want you to think about when we talk about reputation management is in the context of your own. What am I doing to manage my reputation? So when I Google myself, what do I see? You know, when you look up Google, there's something called the knowledge panel. It's like a picture that's like all the
Yes.
different pictures and boxes. You
Yes.
know, you can go to those three little dots and claim it. Claim your name, claim your knowledge panel so that you own it. That's reputation management. Making sure that you own your name on every single social media platform, whether you intend to be on TikTok or Snapchat or not. That's reputation management. You're protecting your reputation. You're protecting your name. Deep fakes are coming. AI is coming. You know, people can
Mm.
take your voice. They can copy your videos, deep fakes, all that kind of stuff. So reputation management, if for me in my book, is about protecting yourself and owning everything that has to do with your name in a way that you care about, whether you decide to be proactively pushing out your image and reputation, or you just want to protect it. So when people Google you, they see what you want them to see, not what the internet is serving up to them. That's what I really, really mean by that.
That's so interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is you are, again, self-reliance here. You're running to the front of your name, your digital name, and making sure that you own and are ahead of how your name shows up on the
Yeah,
internet. That's
exactly.
literally
It's
it.
just like what you post on social. Like once you put it out there, there's like, it's no whack-a-mole. You can't get rid of it. Right. So making sure
Right.
that you think about your reputation and how you want to manage it, like what you put on your LinkedIn, that's reputation management. You're deciding what to share and
Mm.
how to share it. So all I'm saying is be spending time thinking about it. Like spend time thinking about what you want people to see when they Google you, when they look at your Instagram, when they look at your LinkedIn, when they see you speak on stage. It's not just about
Right.
online. reputation
Ooh, tell me
management is
more.
about in real life. How do you treat the barista? How do you work when you communicate with your dry cleaner? How you show up in the grocery?
Amen.
Like people have the ability to take a picture and video it and put it on the internet unfiltered to broadcast to the world. So your reputation is
Yeah.
how do you treat other people? How do you treat your employees? How do you treat your colleagues? How do you show up on stage? How do you show up in everyday small interactions? Those are the meaningful things that build your reputation. Like I always, when I hire people and I interview them, the number one thing I look for, and I tell them this when they interview and they all could talk to you about this, is I want people to say, Heather is a pleasure to work with. How we treat
That's
other
it.
people is key. I want people to come to me and say, your team members are really great people to work with and to deal with on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis. I don't care about the coverage we get or the presentation we nail, or it's like, are these people good people to work with? Do we feel like they're decent,
Mm,
kind human beings who treat each other with respect? That's the barometer of life. That's your
yeah.
reputation, is how do you treat people? Like think of the most famous CEOs or companies who didn't get it right. They didn't treat their employees well and they fired their employees wrongly, or they did something. That's a reputation. Like you could have the best sales, the best marketing, you could have the best social media, you could have the best packaging. But if you don't have a good reputation, you don't have a business.
Right.
And
Right.
the same goes as a
Right.
person. If you don't have a good
Right.
person, no one's going to hire you. No one's going to want to work with you. People are going to give you bad 360 reviews at the company. So
Yeah.
that's also what reputation management involves. It's not just your digital life, it's your real life as well. In fact, the
You just
difference is way
reframed
more
that for me.
important. So that's
Wow.
when I think about reputation management. Think about that. Like it's not about a publicist polishing someone's post on social media or a statement. It's really the day-to-day grinding of being a good person, because we are in a transparent world and anyone can post anything about anybody, whether it's true or not.
Yes. Correct. Maha, I'm when you're talking about all this, I feel like there's so much to hold space for when you think about your reputation, what direction you're building, make sure you're being proactive, giving value, building your networks. And if that's just one person and you're holding space for some big names and have the trust of a lot of people. So you're doing this for you, and then you're also holding space for other people. And I'm just curious, like on the human level, how you're able to maintain that energetically, mentally. Is this a gift that you just have, or have you learned? Is it a skill set too, to just be able to practice holding space? Because I don't know about you. Sometimes, I stay up late at night and sometimes I can't get my mind to shut off. And I've been practicing meditation a little bit more and trying to do all the things I know I'm supposed to do, but I'm just in awe of you, of how you hold space for
First of
that.
all, I love what I do. I'm so passionate about communications, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's an industry that changes every single day, especially for me, like to like not sit
Yes.
still, like of like the introduction of social media and the internet and what's happening with AI. Like it's always ever growing. The news industry, how we tell
Mhm.
stories, how we consume stories. So that fuels me. Honestly, that kind of keeps me alive. It's a pulse. I really, really love what I
Love
do.
it.
I love communications. I love looking at stories. I love looking at how a company responded to a crisis. When you don't respond to a crisis fast enough, it leaves space for misinformation, rumors,
Yes. Yes.
disinformation. So
Yes.
how do they combat that? Like even thinking about the whole Kate Middleton thing when it came out, it's like they weren't addressing it and what happened with the picture and then all the rumors and then they did another thing and then another thing. And then it's like, oh, then we finally got the truth. And like, oh, then everyone felt
Mm.
bad because all this time had gone by. It's almost like sociology, like understanding consumer behavior and patterns about how we consume, how we communicate. And I feel like social media has changed it. I think AI will change it again, and it's going to continue to evolve. So I feel like the how I hold space is I thrive on the knowledge of information and contact and about communications. And I also feel like I like learning. Like everything on the internet is for free. Why wouldn't we take advantage of learning it? I'm like, it's for free all the time. It's
Yeah.
never like we don't have to pay to get onto the internet to learn things. So try to take advantage of what's out there in any format you like, audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos. Consume information and see what's out there. And I think it stimulates me, and I feel like it can stimulate other people as well.
Amen. I want to steer the ship towards the last part of our conversation, towards storytelling. That has been something that has captured my heart as of late, and I can't get enough of learning how people tackle connecting with others through this ancient ritual, storytelling.
Sitting around the
I'm
campfire.
curious. I tell you what, it's so fun. There's so many different ways of approaching it. I'm curious in your world, because I've been interviewing a lot of people in the entertainment business lately, but you're in business, the storytelling. Tell me how you approach finding the story in the story that you're going to communicate, if you know what I mean. So you have this that you're trying to communicate, and you're looking for the story to communicate to the audience. How do you boil that down?
So that is the essence of being good at communications, is how do you find the narrative? How do you find the story?
Yes.
So a couple of things. One is I listen first. Before I tell a story, I listen. What are the conversations? What are they talking about? What's not been said? What's been oversaid? What's the thing that people want to know? What's the thing people need to know? So you always have to understand, if you're going to do any storytelling, any communications, you have to listen first. And by listening first, you have an understanding of where to insert yourself into that conversation. So I always start with listening. And then once I've listened, then I say, okay, the idea that I have, the story I want to tell, the message I want to share, is that relevant? Is it relevant in terms of the timing? Is it relevant in terms of being newsworthy? Is it adding any value to the conversation? That's the second thing you do. So first thing, you have to listen. Then you have to figure out, is this the right time, message, relevance, and that type of thing. And then the last piece is, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is you want to tell a story or a message that's going to connect with that audience. What's the best way to do that? Is it through the spokesperson? Is it through another person? Is it through, then you have to figure out the how based on what is it that you think is going to actually make the biggest difference with the audience.
What if what you're wanting to share hasn't been historically well received or is counter to what's being said? Because I'm picturing, when you say listen and then insert yourself into a conversation, I'm picturing these people at a party and there's already a conversation going on, and Maha comes in and she figures out an interesting way to bring her story to what's already being said. I'm curious, when there's times of like disruption where maybe what you're bringing to the table needs to change the subject. Or go against what's being said.
Or it's unpopular, or it's not something that's been shared before. So I feel like sometimes when you have a message that's new or different or unpopular, or it's against what everyone's talking about, usually it starts with education. So how can I come into this in a softer landing that's going to be unpopular, is I try to educate first. So for example, AI. Very controversial topic. Everyone's like, no, it's coming, it's taking our jobs. I don't like it. I don't want to be about it. I just don't want, it's going to, ruin things. And I don't want everything automated. Like, I don't want everything done through computers. I want the human touch. Well, maybe then the entry point, if I want to be doing a narrative around the benefits of AI, I can start by talking about some of the educational pieces of like, what are some of the good things that we can achieve with AI that if we didn't have AI, we would be left behind. Example, education. Example, medicine. What are some of the things in medicine that might be advances that AI can speed up the process so we can cure for cancer in 5 years versus 50 years, right?
Yeah.
So educating the audience might be a nice way of helping them come into a little bit closer to your understanding without 100% convincing them, because you want them to process, you want them to learn, oh, that's new information. Maybe I could think about it that way, in a different way.
Interesting. Where do you go to learn and sharpen your storytelling techniques?
I am a person who likes to digest from multiple sources. So I do listen to podcasts and I do read books, but I feel like an unpopular convention way of learning is through other people. And a lot of people are like, what? You can learn from other people? I'm like, Yeah, I spend time with other people that aren't in my circle so I can learn from them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
everyone thinks about learning from books and podcasts and YouTube videos or through, formal learning, education,
Mm.
colleges, universities, online courses. But what about somebody else that you would normally talk to or meet with and learn from them? There was a
Mm.
business person that I really read his book and I was like, I really want to talk to him. I want to spend some time with him just so I can learn from him. So you need to find the different things that will stimulate your learning. And I find that it's a wide variety. It's not just one thing. Just because you like to eat a variety of different foods, you don't eat the same thing. So you need to change your learning menu as well. Like your diet of who you learn from has to be different. Otherwise you're going to get bored of it and you're going to not want to learn anymore. So
That's so
that's kind of
good.
what I do.
That's so good. That's
And I
so
listen to
good.
a lot of different shows. Like I learned from you and I learned from other podcasts and I learned from different news programs. Like that's also learning, is from different viewpoints that aren't what you normally would consume.
Add diversity in. Yes. Amen to that. I'm wrapping it back to your book and this message of self-reliance. You are strong. You have very strong presence. I can tell you know who you are, what you're put on this earth to do, and you're freaking doing it. The folks I attract and the people who are listening to this podcast, they are good-hearted people who often have the hardest time putting themselves forward, asking for the opportunity. They have the opposite issue of most Americans, where it's like, no, you go first,
Yeah.
And I would just love your perspective for this specific audience when asking doesn't come natural, being the martyrs sometimes a little bit more in our
Asking is
instinct,
hard. It's hard for me.
going for it, putting yourself out there, singing, feeling like egotistical, not wanting to take an opportunity from somebody else, not wanting to bother Maha. You know what I'm saying? So we need a reframe with this. And that's why I'm so excited for this book. I think this is a book that my folks definitely need to read. I need to read. How do you advise kind of the person who stands in the corner
Yep.
waiting?
Yeah, I think, asking for help is hard. Nobody likes to do it. I don't like to do it, but I'm like, here's how I would frame it. What's the alternative? If you don't ask, you won't receive. So you can
Yeah.
say, you know what, I don't really have the courage to ask for help, or I don't want to get someone to introduce me to somebody. Think about what the alternative is. The alternative is not getting that opportunity or not doing it. So push yourself out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you don't want to ask for help, but maybe you can ask somebody who knows somebody who can help you. Like try to find a bridge to get you halfway there. I find that most of the opportunities that we get are the ones that we have to go up and grab ourselves. And a big concept of
So
the
true.
book is giving you the courage and the tools to do it. Even if you're an introvert, how to network. Even if you don't want to ask, how to ask. I even teach how to do that DM properly, to get it off DM and into an
Mm-hmm.
email. I really want people to learn these skills because
Yeah.
they've worked for me. I've taught them to
Yeah.
lots of people throughout my career. And I feel like it is empowering and powerful. And it'll inspire a lot of people to find within themselves the things that they didn't know that they were capable of. And that's why I'm really
Amen.
excited to bring this book to the market. And honestly, really grateful for your time and to be here today.
October, is it 7th?
October 8th,
It comes
and
out
they can pre-order the
October
book
8th.
on Amazon. And I have a Facebook group that I created called 7 Rules. If they want to join, I'm do free webinars and workshops and guides. And anyone who's from your community, Heather, let them drop into the Facebook group and say, hello, we're from Heather's community. I would love to see you guys. And really, if I can answer any questions, I want to be a source for many people.
Wonderful. I'll have that linked up in the show notes along with the pre-order links. You can go ahead and do that now. Very last question. First of all, thank you. You didn't have to do this
I wanted to do
at all. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for jumping on. This is just a joy meeting you. Last question. What is something right now in this season of your life that you are deeply questioning? You don't have the answer to. It could be something really small. It could be something profound, but this is something that you, the woman, what is up with this in this world? What's on your mind lately?
That's such a hard question.
I know. I love it.
Well,
It
there's
just
so many things, actually. It's not just like I can't think of an answer of things that I want to crack or that I want to, scale. I find that, a couple of things. One is, I do a lot of work in Egypt and Dubai and Saudi, and I really want to educate more people about the culture and why you should think about doing
mm,
things outside the US. And so I think that's one thing that I really want to have an impact on. Two is I want to help women step into their own power. And I feel like, can I do it? Can I help one person? Can I help two people? How do you do it? And let them believe in themselves the way that no one, like I said, came to me like no one said, oh, we believe in you, go do this.
yeah,
I kind of had to like
yeah.
pull myself out of it. And I feel like that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I feel like it can really, really help. The other thing I think a lot about is obviously the impact of social media on young people and like how can you turn it into a catalyst for good change
Mhm,
and really build something
mm.
that, it can be so economically empowering. And so how to learn that. And I actually want to learn more about that in myself. And I feel like it's a skill and it just requires time to learn.
It has been a joy and honor. Thank you for the work that you're doing in this world. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for caring about leaving a legacy and training other people on everything that you've learned over your career. You could have just kept all this goodness to yourself and continued on with your dreams, but to be able to give it back to other folks, man, it's been a joy and an honor to get to know you, Maha. So thanks for joining us today.
Continue to see you on social and listening to this podcast. I love it.